Welcome to Changing the Conversation. This podcast explores the mix of diversity, culture and tech innovations in our industry. Join us as we sit down with trailblazers, thought leaders and innovators who are reshaping the landscape of insurance, bringing you stories that redefine the narrative. We are your guide to the evolving landscape of insurance. This is Changing the Conversation, brought to you by Mackay.
Donna, thank you so much for joining me on Changing the Conversation. We have had a conversation about doing a podcast, for the last 5 months, and we're finally here.
That's right, yes. Time flies by in such a flash. But I said to you at the beginning of this, certainly I've been listening to your podcast for so long, and 3 years ago I remember making that aim to get on your podcast one day, and I'm thrilled that it's finally happened.
We're here and I'm so excited and I love that story. So thank you. So today's conversation is quite broad and it's predominantly around your journey through entrepreneurship in the insurance industry, bringing in the flexibility that you require as a mum and a wife and a human and a director and all of those things. But also we're going to touch on a couple of areas within the insurance industry that perhaps you've been sort of campaigning for change and think there should be more done in terms of treating clients fairly. Yeah. And I know consumer duty is a really big topic and I've done lots of podcasts on it. So I'm really interested to kind of hear where we go with this. I wonder if maybe to stop me waffling more than anything, if you could give me a little bit of a background into who Donna Robertson is and what Squared Broking came from and why.
Yeah, sure. So I guess like a lot of people, I sort of loosely fell into the industry in that I was sent to an insurance office for work experience when I must have been 15, and I loved it. I was sent there by mistake. It wasn't where I was meant to go, but I loved it. And I left school halfway through 5th year and I went back to that insurance office saying, would they give me a job? And thankfully they took me on. And that was my entry into the insurance world. And I have been in it for 24 years. I have worked in different places. I've worked in a national, I've worked in a startup. And I just noticed as I was going into getting married and having kids, when I've had my first daughter, there was an advert about flexible working. And at the time, it was one of those sort of appointed rep schemes. And it really resonated with me that you could have your client base, but you could make your job work around your family life. And at the time, I didn't do anything more about it. I went back to my job, which we had to go back full time. And it wasn't until I had my second daughter that I thought, this can't be the way that we work. There has to be more flexibility in the workplace. And I can't be expected to be in 2 places at the one time. And I looked around the other brokers in the Glasgow market to see, who do I see doing something different? Who's a bit more forward thinking? And it was a lot of much the same. Not to speak bad of anyone, I'm sure they give brilliant customer service, but it just wasn't what I was looking for. And in the end, I thought, well, I can't attach my name to somebody else, so I need to give it a go and set up my own business so that I can work the plan around my family, around the girls, but around customers as well to make sure that they're getting a great service.
It's incredible. And that story resonates really personally with me and my kind of career path, which has been very varied, and with a lot of people that I speak to, because it's that age-old juggle, isn't it, of how do you be everything you want to be as a mum, but also how do you achieve everything you want to achieve in as a career and build your own kind of financial stability. And it's just incredible.
Being ambitious just because you've got children, you still have your own career goals that you want to get. And it would blow my mind that I would speak to some women and they say, well, I've had to leave this workplace because they can't offer me part-time or flexible working. And what a loss of losing that knowledge and talent.
I couldn't agree more. When did you start Squared?
It was at the end of 2019. So we're nearly 5 years in.
Gee, so nearly 5 years in and you started at the beginning of COVID?
Yes. What a wild time
when
that
the world
was.
went to home working. How was that?
It was really fortunate for me. So as a young business, I didn't have to spend full days out travelling to get prospects. So it was time that then I was in the office. I didn't have those travelling costs. And all of a sudden during that time, nobody cared where you were in the UK because everybody was on Zoom calls. So it actually worked out really well for me as a startup business. I was one of the lucky ones.
Yeah, do you know what? That's amazing. And a lot of what we do at Mackay is podcasting.
Yes.
And we are a similar age. So we started in April 2019.
Right.
And actually, it took COVID for the Zoom era for people to be really happy doing podcasts on a platform like this. And now we've reintroduced face-to-face podcasts where it's feasible, but this
Yes.
is just a phenomenal,
It is. It's
a
a great.
phenomenal opportunity. And
Yeah.
people are now on board with it.
That's it. That's it. I know. Funny how we're forced into everything and then it becomes the norm.
So just going back to the flexibility and the need for it and how wonderful it is that you've managed to achieve that. My own personal question is how, because I have 3 children and I work for myself and I do not achieve the balance particularly well. How do you do it?
Do you know, earlier on I was thinking about this question and my flexibility, and of course I do not want to come across as a fraud because I am still working on it. So the flexibility mostly comes from, I guess, just being available to the girls. So not having to ask anyone, can I have time off so I can go to the parents' evening? Not having to ask for time off for the school shows. And then, yeah, I might finish off a bit earlier to take them for a haircut. And then when they go to bed at night, I log back on and finish off whatever I need to finish off. That the flexibility that comes round about, the hours shift. Yes.
Do you know, you're absolutely right. And I do remember a situation where I had to ask for time off to get my ill daughter from nursery school at the time, which was years ago. And I remember the guilt I had about both. Whereas
Yes.
now I feel much more confident that I can go, okay, well, that's fine because I can still offer the service and the
Yeah.
standards that I require of Mackay without compromising my children. I just have to compromise sleep, and that works.
Yeah, that's it. That's a nice short-term solution, isn't it? But you just readjust the day to make sure you can fit things in.
How have you kind of, I suppose, what are the biggest challenges you've found around being an entrepreneur in the insurance space and trying to manage those challenges that come your way?
There are many challenges. And before I set up Squared, I had done management roles. So I knew how to manage people, but I never knew how to set up an office. And it's very much a learning game as you go along. I didn't know anything about the accounts. I never had to submit FCA returns. And I guess it's then surrounding yourself with people that can help you with that. Looking for those extra pair of hands that you can ask questions of or that can support you. But a lot of the challenge also comes, and I don't know if you feel the same, is your own mind chatter. So it's your own confidence levels. I'm coming over that. And on that, I do have a mentor that I sound off to when I'm having those days. Because there'll be days where I'm thinking, I've been in insurance for 24 years, but you think, do I actually know what I'm doing? You know, that days where you really, really doubt yourself.
I know them so well.
Yes. And you think, well, I've got this far. I'm chartered. Of course, I know what I'm doing. But sometimes you just need that second person to come in and say, look, this is what's happening. This is what we're doing today. This is why you're thinking that way. And have somebody that challenges you to question why you're thinking that way. What is it that's getting into your mind or your mindset to get over that mind chatter? So, of course, I speak to my husband, speak to my business mentor, and my husband's is always on my side. So you need that other person that can tell you the truth.
Oh, I love those truthful days. But actually, I don't know if you find this. I find in those awful moments where you're just tired and you're doubting everything and you're like, oh my God, am I doing the right thing? Am I good enough at this? Am I good enough, Mum? Am I good enough everything? It almost makes you work harder. In fact, it 100% makes you work harder at everything. And I always, when I'm in those moments, take a second to go, you are because you try.
Yes.
And it's that effort that is the real key thing. And secondarily, if that's even a word, I had a really interesting recorded chat with David Clamp from Camelot today. And his vision for Camelot was born out of the loneliness you feel when you're making decisions and trying to push on all boundaries. So developing a network of people, C-suite people that have been there and done that and can support you, whether you are a one-man band or whether you are Aviva.
Yes.
And I just find it fascinating that at the core of it, it's what we all need. We need that person to go, well done, you're okay. Have you tried this?
Yeah, that's it. That's it. Yeah, and I guess the fact that we're even thinking, are we doing the right thing, means that we are pushing ourselves on because you want to be the best of the best.
Exactly. And the only way you improve is by self-challenge. And if you are, I'm going to say, lucky enough to be like I am, constantly challenging myself, I use lucky in really, really loose terms, then you can only think, look, okay, it's a positive. It's really hard, but it's a positive.
Yeah.
And I'm going to take the positive from that.
That's it.
Whilst I
That's
desperately
it.
try not
Get
to fall
another
asleep.
day and take the learning from it and come back better and stronger.
Absolutely. So the insurance industry has, I think, improved on flexible working specifically since COVID. And I've heard a lot of talk around flexible working. What is your experience, perhaps from colleagues that are still in the industry at different places, about whether the insurance industry's really got there?
I can see it has in the broking space, but I think the challenges we have then is that the insurers don't necessarily adopt the flexible working. So then your only opportunity to catch them is during your traditional 9 to 5 hours. And that, I think, is a tricky side. And then I guess as insurers have come back to the office, they're easier to get a hold of, but you'll have heard many times, especially during the COVID years, you didn't even know where to start to approach some of the big insurers. You didn't know which number to try. Numbers would ring out. You'd phone the main office number and you're thinking, why is this not then bouncing off to somebody else in the team? Like numbers for massive insurers would just ring out. So I think it has evolved to a certain degree. We haven't quite got there yet. And I don't know whether it is a sort of change of the hours, but we need to figure it out to make it a better scenario for everyone involved. Because at the moment, I guess as brokers, sort of hitting a wall, you can take a case so far, but until you can hit 9 o'clock in the morning again, you can't speak to an underwriter about a case. So there's still work to be done.
How does that affect you when you're working different hours, and what kind of fixes have you come up with when you've got a really urgent case or a big problem and it's 8 o'clock at night and you couldn't work from 3 till 6 because of, whatever reason? Like how do you do that?
We either, so I've got the team in the office that will help out, so they'll put phone calls in. We work really closely together on cases, but otherwise I'll need to think about what's the critical parts that I need to speak to somebody about and what's less critical. If it's a case of I need to negotiate on the numbers, but the report still needs written. Well, that's what I can do out of hours. So you just pick on the really critical bits that you need, information from somebody else, and then leave the rest to later. That's how I would tend to go about it.
How big's the team, the Squed broking team?
We have a full-time member of staff plus me. We've got an apprentice who we're training up, and then we've got 2 virtual assistants who are trained on Actress and they're insurance qualified. So they're specifically insurance virtual assistants. So there's 5 of us in total.
Oh, that's lovely. So it brings that kind of teamwork, that connectivity, a little bit of maybe office banter or office learning. Or I often hear about osmosis, learning through osmosis, which I think is fabulous when you've got an apprentice coming in.
Oh, the apprentice has been so great because you just see everything with a fresh pair of eyes, especially around the terminology. So in the early days when he was asking, well, what does that mean? Or what does this mean? And you're like, yeah, that doesn't match up to what the description is. Or really straightforward things, we're sending out documents and I'd asked him, had you attached the statement of fact? He said, well, this insurer didn't send it, but they did send me a risk profile. It's like, oh yeah, it means the same, just different insurers call it different things. Silly things like that.
Yeah, and it is the terminology in a lot of instances. Terminology and communication, and that's not an insurance industry specific problem.
Yeah, absolutely.
Talk to me a little bit about so we talked about flexible working, but I'm kind of interested in how the insurance industry has evolved on a wider way from when you started, after leaving school to where you are now running your own business. What changes have you seen?
The technology change is probably the main thing. I can't believe I used to send submissions by fax and then quickly phone them to see if they got it the other side.
Are we more efficient as a result of that?
Are we more efficient? I would say no. I wouldn't say we were any more efficient. And although there's been the technology advancements, I wouldn't say on a whole the industry has evolved very much. I think we're still getting caught out by practices that we should have left in the dark ages. And I know that the FCA are doing a huge piece on consumer duty. Has it actually changed anything in the landscape? I would say probably not, other than not selling gap insurance anymore. I wouldn't say there's been other changes. The changes that I would like to see are on a more practical level. And this is the reason that I reached out to you in the first place. So the examples that I would have, things that have genuinely affected clients and clients within the last 6 months would be on the motor fleet side, and I'm sure all brokers would agree with me on this, it is very difficult as an attacking broker to come in and win a bit of business, because what you have is the holding broker who holds all the information, because the client doesn't really get access to the claims experience. Then you need the claims experience to get quotes. So you submit that reporting mandate. The holding insurer notifies the broker that somebody's in for it, and they have 5 days, this 5-day holding period before they release it to you, at which time the existing broker will flood the market with a presentation, and the presentation how they want to present it, rightly or wrongly, and then you come in afterwards. But you're always on the back foot because somebody else is already leading it. And I don't feel like that's fair for clients. And the scenario I had was a prospect had come to me because they had been put on extension by the existing broker. Their terms had gone up from 100,000 to 400,000. They had 2 days to look for something else, and the holding broker would not release this confirmed claims experience. They sent them the claims listing telling them that would be enough to get another quote, but we all know it's not. So all they did in that scenario, in my opinion, is hold the client over a barrel. They had a fleet of over 100 vehicles. They need insurance to operate the business. So they have to take cover one way or another. And it blew my mind that this confirmed claims experience is that client's data. It's their personal data that they weren't able to get hold of to then go and source something else. And we all know how hard it is in the business world just now. They've got the cost of living crisis. The client was going through a period where they had to, increase the wages for the living wage increase. There's all these costs going up. We don't need insurance brokers adding to the problem.
Absolutely. And as you've just mentioned, consumer duty is such a hot topic. How is this still enabled? What's the solution? What should happen, and how do we make it happen quickly?
So I contacted the ABI, the FCA, and BIBA. Now, BIBA did look into it and came back to me, and it's not on the agenda for them just now, and I never got an acknowledgement from the ABI or the FCA. I've spoken to different people in the market with different responses. I wonder whether there's a way where we collect the information when we place a risk with an insurer. We have to provide, an email address for the main contact person at the client. So when it comes to pre-renewal, when the insurer is issuing the confirmed claims experience to the broker, they issue it to the client at the same time. Now, I know with insurers, IT, and it's probably not possible, but there has to be a solution somewhere. And when I do speak to people, you say, oh, well, that will never happen, or it's never been done that way. And I know it's not. But equally, we never used to collect ERN numbers, and we do that now. So we can make the shift. We just need to find the best way about going about it.
You know what? It is a really simple solution. Just add the end client's details to the renewal information with the client. Surely that cannot be above and beyond what is possible.
I don't think.
How do you get that kind of real common sense small adjustment to make such a huge difference. Is this problem one you've come across before? Is it something that happens
Yes.
regularly?
Well, it's something that happens regularly. I've come across it lots of times, and I'm sure lots of other brokers have as well. I think I took it very personally on this one because I felt for this business, it was such a huge increase for them, and they had nowhere to turn. And she was coming to me and she was saying, look, I know you need this, but I can't get it from them. And I felt, I guess also being a business owner, I put myself in her position and I felt, just trapped. And it seemed not fair. And the same client was also caught out because they've got a different renewal date for their liability. So after we never got the chance to do anything more on the motor, she came to me saying, my liability is due for renewal. Will you take a look at it? And as you know, we've been going through a hard market for a few years. And when I quoted, the first quote I got back was 40,000 less than they were currently paying. And in this current market, it shouldn't be that easy to make such a big saving. So in my head, I'm thinking this client's been paying more than they should have been, and probably for the last few years. So we presented our report to them, which they said they'd never had. They'd never had a broker come out and act like they got the final prices and they had face-to-faces with the broker, but they'd never had a full comprehensive report about what they have and what their gaps in cover are. So they got that from us, and then their existing broker came out and she said, this is the first time we've ever had a report for them. They've come down to match your terms, so they've been able to wipe 40,000 off the premium overnight. And if we stay with them, they'll remove our £20,000 year-end declaration. Now that client, they did have an increased turnover. They'd had a great year. But I dare say if the broker had been checking in on them for a client that size, because they're a 10 million plus business, turnover business. So you think they warrant at least a quarterly, maybe even a half yearly check-in. So you could track that they are smashing it that year. They're having a great year. So they shouldn't have been taken by surprise a couple of days before renewal that they've got a massive year-end declaration. And that again just feels to me it's poor broking practice. It is a way to retain your client, but not under the best circumstances. Surely that must erode your relationship with them or the trust.
It's huge in terms of trust and just good business practice, just good person, being a good person.
Yes.
So how this is a bit weird, and you probably can't answer it because it's a bit of a weird question, but are there loads or not many of that style broking? Is that something that's being stamped out? Is there more of the yous in the world?
I feel like that practice is old school broking. Short term, get what you can year on year, and it's doing the bare minimum. I think there is less of that. It's hard to say because I do feel at times now that I've got my own business that you're just in this bubble where you're doing your own thing and you don't really see what the outside world is doing. But I hope there's less of that happening.
Just going back slightly, so I've done quite a few podcasts with Sam White, who I think is a phenomenal human, and she talks quite a lot about insurance being a people business, and you've got the left and right brain, and we can get caught in the numbers and the data, but at the end of the day it's about the feeling and the creativity. I'm probably totally butchering her her kind of thing, but essentially that's what I took from it. I thought it's really, really interesting because she's not advocating for women per se. She's advocating for equality and both men and women having an equal right at the table, because both have different skill sets kind of naturally that they bring to the table and support each other. So she's really interesting to talk to, actually. And she's also sort of started her career in motor. So you should definitely speak to Sam about this issue we've just discussed. You should definitely do that. Sam, if you listen, then please reach out to Donna. And we've talked about flexibility. So empowering women, future talent, bringing all of that to the table. What advice would you give now to yourself, but 25 years ago, and to others in that position now?
It's funny, as you started talking about that, I instantly thought of the woman approach. And I'm not saying that there's not men in the industry that don't have the same approach, but I think on the fairer system and and how we present cases. I think that women have sort of the softer edge on it.
Well, you said a minute ago that you felt for your client. You were in that position as a business owner for your client going, oh my God, I feel trapped.
Yeah.
And that emotive, empathetic approach is so critical for insurance.
Yes, because like you say, it's built on relationships and you build that trust with your client. And you're right, it can be a numbers game, but I do believe it's much wider than that, and it's getting to know them and know what's going on in their world to be able to then service them properly. But the advice I would give, I guess when I was younger, I was much more aware of being the only female in the room. And I would I would definitely let that intimidate me. And I would stay quieter than I should have. And hopefully over time that is shifting, that we are seeing more female representation and another representation. But I would say not to let it hold you back. I think a lot of male have the stronger voice and we think that we don't have an opinion or we don't have a good enough opinion. But women can sometimes look at it, as we say, in a different perspective and see other things that maybe the other side isn't, the more analytical brain isn't seeing. So I guess it would be just to speak out more often, and your thoughts are good and you might come up with something that nobody else had thought of.
And also, if you come up with something that doesn't go anywhere, like you don't know what that sparks and where it leads to.
Yes.
Just trust that what is inside you and what you think and say is as valuable as what anybody else says. And that's something I always think about and try to talk to my girls about, because when I look at I've got 2 girls and a boy, and when I sometimes look at, I listen to Ollie talking to his friends and he'll be saying, I am literally the best in my class at this. No, you're not. And my girls will go, oh, but so and so can do that so much better. And it's just a funny, just watching it makes me think, oh, okay, so how do we work on that? Criticism is a really difficult thing to take and to take well. And sometimes it's delivered constructively, and that's really helpful. And sometimes it's just nasty and mean, and makes me want to hide in a cupboard and cry. How have you dealt with criticism throughout your journey, and what advice would you have to other people struggling?
I do take things very personally, so it would eat at me for a while. I think now, and I don't know if it's an age thing, so now that I've hit my 40s and I'm, evolving a bit more, I can pick out the bit that's the constructive part, however it's delivered, because it might hurt you initially, but the other person might still have a good point. So I'll take what they're saying and see whether it genuinely is something that I need to change about myself or not. But I've also still got to recognise I have my own way of working and I have my own approach. And just because it doesn't suit the other person, it doesn't mean it doesn't suit, 90% of the other people that I deal with. So I guess it's picking out the bits that's going to genuinely help you grow if it's useful. And if not, it's not to say what you're doing is wrong.
I love that. And the concept of, is it something that can help me grow, is really interesting. And I also, one of the things I'm trying to be mindful is what is mine and what is yours. So, whoever's delivering the constructive or other criticism, take what I should own, but understand that some of it is not mine to own, and it's okay, you can just keep that. Exactly. Really difficult, but I find it quite an interesting concept. Right, I think I've got one more question for you, because I'm really intrigued about this, because you have been on Newsnight, haven't you?
I have, yes.
So tell me, what did you ask the politicians, and what are your current thoughts on that particular issue?
So I was there, it was on the business angle, and I was talking around apprenticeships. And I was noting that, yes, the insurance industry has a very ageing workforce. And as people go to retire, and quite a few I'm seeing are taking early retirement, it's a massive loss of knowledge leaving the marketplace. And I don't know if it was maybe sort of 10 years before I came into the industry, but there was much more structured programs when people entered, and an expectation that they would go and do their qualifications, where there seems to be less emphasis on that now. Then you've got people coming in who aren't being forced into doing their qualifications. We had the kind of knowledge gap through the COVID years, and there's maybe not a strong foundation of knowledge. So my concern is that we've got the ageing workforce, it's leaving, and we need to take on the apprentice to take in fresh talent. So my question was to the politicians, what support can they give? Because when I took on my apprentice, it was capped. It had to be somebody that was under 25. What support can they give us? Because you dedicate a lot of time to the training, a lot of time to putting them through their exams. What supports can they give us, both financial and otherwise, but also can they raise that age limit? Because we don't want to just cap it at the younger. We want to be able to take in really anybody of any age, because even if somebody wants to decide they want a new role in their 40s, 50s, they've got transferable skills. So let's bring them in, make it easier for businesses to bring them in, especially when we know we're going to have that loss of talent at the other end.
And that feeds right back into a sort of a theme of our conversation, which is women around childbearing age often go for a career change. I did. I went from being an immigration lawyer to a whole world of things before I ended up where I am now, like huge changes.
Yes.
And I would have loved, there were times where I looked at an opportunity and I thought, do you know what? I have so much I could give this that I can't get into it because I haven't got X, Y, and Z. And I think that's a really, really important thing.
It is.
Was it fun being on Newsnight?
It was great. And it was Kirsty Wark that was presenting, and she was so lovely and approachable, because initially you're thinking, oh my goodness, she's such a force, but she was so down to earth. She was checking her script with everybody in the crowd. They shouted out a few errors. She took it really well. She said, yeah, you're right, actually, I'm just going to make that change. And I thought, wow, what a woman.
I love it. I absolutely love it. Donna, I have really enjoyed talking to you. I think we should definitely plan another podcast in a few months' time, because I want to talk more about knowledge retention, aging workforce, and I've had lots of conversations with lots of different people around that, and I just love to get more into the meat of it. So let's definitely plan another one. I am very grateful to you for your time and giving your time to me to have this conversation. Thank you.
No, thank you. As I said, it's been a goal to get onto your podcast. I'm so thrilled, and thank you for being such a lovely host.
I'm definitely using that as a soundbite. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to another enlightening episode of Changing the Conversation. If you enjoyed today's insights and want to stay connected with the latest industry trends, be sure to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Feel free to reach out to us on social media or through our website to share your thoughts and suggestions, or even to nominate someone whose contribution deserves to be heard. Until next time, this is Sarah Myers-Goff signing off from Changing the Conversation.